All right, I am here with John Shufeldt, and he is the managing director at Accelerant Ventures. How's it going, John?
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, really excited to unpack your successes. But before we get there, I always like to start with a background. What got you into business and entrepreneurship to start?
So I was literally started when I was about 10 years old, making candles and selling them, mowing lawns, shoveling snow. So I did kind of things to raise money as a kid. Took that into college where I was an RA, drove an ambulance, then into medical school, ran a note service for our medical school class while working as an orderly in the ER and going to school. And then after did emergency medicine residency and literally got out and was hired as an ED director and then took over the contract and expanded it to multiple other emergency departments. And then started an urgent care business in '93 that we grew over 17 years to about 60 centers. That was called Next Care.
Nice, very nice. So, really starting, in the ER kind of EMT space is very cool. You're the first person I've had on the pod to kind of be in that specific space. So I'm excited to unpack this a little bit. The Next Care venture, how did that begin? Did you find a co-founder? Did you start it on your own? What did that look like?
So, I've been practicing emergency medicine at that point for uh, 4 years since residency and 7 years total. And I realized I came from kind of a knife and gun club in the south side of Chicago, but I realized a lot of people are using the emergency department for non-emergencies, as they still are. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous. They're paying, thousands of dollars, or the insurance plans are paying thousands of dollars for care that could be done outside the emergency department. Urgent cares really didn't exist then, but it made sense for me to have a walk-in clinic that could handle them quasi emergencies or urgencies. And so we started one. There's two other guys that I kind of talked into doing it with me. And the idea is we all invest in it. We'd all work there together and trade off shifts until we got it going. One guy bailed out after 2 weeks and wanted his money back. The other guy said, he's his lifelong friend of mine, said, "Look, I'll do one of these and I'm done. I can't handle the stress." So after that, I just grew it on my own, and every time one got the cash flow break even, I'd open another one, and then it just expanded geometrically.
Wow. Wow. And you did that for how long did you say? From 93
So
to
so 17 years. So that was '93. In 2008, we raised money. So I did 25 million in debt and 25 million in equity from Goldman Sachs and a private equity group. We closed on the Friday before the Monday Lehman Brothers failed.
wow.
And so the whole time our investment banker is going, step on the gas, step on the gas. I'm like, okay, I like to move fast, but the constant step on the gas is getting moderately annoying. Had he not done that and had he not had that perspective, we probably would not have closed the following week, which would have been okay retrospectively. But as it turns out, we closed before the markets crashed and we would have been severely devalued, I'm sure, like everybody else was.
Hmm. Wow. The Friday before. That's
Friday,
crazy.
Friday before the Monday. And then I lasted about 2 years, which apparently is a record for CEOs and private equity companies. But at the time, I did not know that, or I probably would have gone another direction.
Nice. So you stay around for 2 years and you kind of bow out after the 2 years. How long between ventures did it take you to start the next thing?
About 2 weeks. So had a disagreement with the board. They had the money. I still probably had control at that point, but they had the money. And so I, quote unquote, resigned, but they wanted me to do something that I thought was untoward. And that isn't me. And so I've been thinking about this project where there's a lot of patients that you don't need to touch to figure out what's wrong with them, particularly behavioral health patients, of course, where you shouldn't be
Right.
touching them, but even other patients. So I opened a company, sort of company called MeMD, which was a very early virtual medicine company. I don't
Cool.
know if it was the first, but it might have been the second. And so grew that over realistically the next 11 years and sold that to Walmart in June of 2021 at the absolute peak of the market timing when Teladoc was trading at like $330 a share. So I'd love to say we hit the timing. It was all by plan because I'm a genius. None of that is true. It was purely luck and COVID, and they were trying to keep up with Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to bring up the the pandemic about how that transpired there, because you guys started it, were pretty, I'd say, mature at the point that things really blew up, like the black swan of telemedicine really exploded. So what was that like when you guys hit that year?
Well, it's kind of funny because I think I intubated the first COVID patient in Phoenix who literally came in quasi healthy 4 hours earlier, got discharged with a sore throat, and came back when I started my shift. Came back and just went like that, and was dead in an hour. Took a chest X-ray. His lungs were whited out. Very classic COVID. But at the time, we had heard of COVID, but no one had seen a COVID patient yet, to their knowledge. And this guy was, I think, literally the first person in Phoenix. He was an Afghan refugee. He lived in a Afghan small apartment complex, which was full of immigrants, and so they were very tightly packed in there. And I think there was just probably almost got spread amongst them. So I got to know his family a little bit after that. So one part, and we were have a business where we staff a lot of travel facilities. So in one part of my world, it was just blowing up with these sick people and physicians who were sick, and they couldn't get to work. It was horrible weather because it was part of, kind of the end of winter. So it was one part of my life was just a disaster, and the other part of my life, the MeMD part, was just exploding. We
Mm-hmm.
had providers in all 50 states. We were record busy. We were record busy, really making a difference in the world, which was cool. And then we started engaging, going down this path with Walmart, which was literally the 900-pound gorilla who
Mm-hmm.
was interested in us. And fortunately, we had done all the things previously to make sure our security was set up and we're HIPAA compliant. And we dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's because we had some really phenomenal people working there who accomplished that. And I met the Walmart leadership, and they literally, I'd probably been in a Walmart 3 times in my life before interacting with them. They could not have been a classier, more professional group of people,
Mm-hmm.
and they were great actually.
Nice, nice. So how big was the team at that point when
So
you?
we probably had, oh gosh, probably 500 or so providers, and an executive team, kind of executive core group of about 12 people.
Mhm. Got it. And what were the initial conversations? Were you approached by them? Did you hire like a banker? How did that work?
We had hired an investment banker before, for a couple of years before, and it went nowhere. Um, Hired Wells Fargo, who was just 10x more professional and more put together than our previous investment banker. And they went out and reached out, and Walmart, we just hit our timing. That Walmart had looked at a couple other companies, and for whatever reason didn't work out. I met with Walmart's the U.S. CEO, and hit it off with him. And when Walmart buys a company, um, they leave no stone uncovered as far as diligence goes. They are incredibly risk averse because being so big, I'm sure they get tens of hundreds of lawsuits every day
Yeah.
thrown their way. So they're not going to make a mistake. And we went through about a 6 month diligence period with them. And again, they could not be more professional. But it was not wasn't unpleasant at all. But they left no stone unturned.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great segue into how to be prepared. So a question that comes up a lot is how to how to structure the business, how to put everything in order. So what were some things that you learned or things that you could share with people listening about how to prepare for something like that?
So we look at with Accelerant Ventures, we're a health tech, med tech seed in the early Series A venture capital fund. In the mistakes, God knows I've made, but the mistakes I see people make that you've got to get down early. One, make sure you have your cap table in order. We've seen some crazy cap tables with all these different warrants and all these different terms, and for somebody coming in to buy it, or to make a large investment, it becomes very convoluted because there's all these nuances to all these different deals you've struck up as you're growing. But everybody does it. So cleaning up your cap table early, the simpler the better. One class of stock, or two. So that's important. Number two is really building your data room as you go. Mistakes I've seen other people make is, wow, if someone's interested, I better put together a data room. And now they're digging up docs from long ago and trying to fit it all in. But if you just do it as you go and be super diligent about it, if you use Carta, for example, to do it, and I'm not a huge Carta fan, but I will say it helps them. It helps founders be organized both on their cap table and on their documents. Those are keys to making yourself more attractive. And then, of course, with any IT play, making sure you have all security tests and penetration tests, so no one's getting into your system and causing havoc.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Carta is it's probably the gold standard in terms of everybody that I've talked to. I use it as well. I think a lot of people have grown accustomed to it. Just automating it and having someone like with a platform managing it is really key. So, what about timing? I mean, I can't not talk about timing here because you've nailed it. Like the 2021 is just the point
Pinnacle.
at the
Yep.
top of Everest. So, what can you share around why it felt the right time for you and for other people that are thinking about it?
Well, like I said, for me, this was pure luck. It just happened to work out that we stole at the little peak of the market, and I think within a month, the telemedicine market kind of crashed. Um, Again, pure luck. And so what I learned over the years is if you try to time the peak, you will often, if not always, be wrong. So you're much better off. I always say you're better off selling a story than a trailing 12. But if you can sell on the way up where you have, blue ocean ahead of you, but you're not quite all the way through yet, that's a great time to sell because you never know when Lehman Brothers is going to fail on the Monday after the Friday. So, if you can sell a great story and a great month over month growth rate, that's a time to sell.
Nice, good
It's
advice.
market timing is nearly impossible.
Totally out of your control. And I like what you said about like when there's blue ocean in front of you and you can sell the story as like month over month makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Very eloquently stated. So I guess when it comes to the negotiations, like you guys sat down with the Walmart team, you hit it off with the CEO in the US, which is a great foothold. But how did negotiations work? Were you guys just on email? Were you going in person to where they're based, or
No,
how'd
never
you?
met in person. It was all Zoom.
Okay.
And until the very end did we meet in person and only with part of the group. The main people where it was all virtual.
Hmm.
And what they said was, you name the price, we'll name the terms. And so my ears perked up. Wow, I named the price. And when I was talking to the CEO, I made some comment about it. And he goes, John, let me tell you. His name was John also. He goes, John, let me tell you. He goes, this amount won't even be a rounding error. He goes, I get beaten up at board meetings if a business unit's not doing 40 billion. So don't worry about the price. But the
Wow.
terms, they were very invested in the terms. The earnout, the 2 years of it, the metrics you had to hit,
Yeah.
any of the flags that came up, they weren't unfair, but they were unbending on the terms, as they should have been because they weren't unfair.
Yeah. And like you said, selling the story of the monster Amazon right next door
Yeah,
that's competing and just eating the market. Um,
and that's
yeah.
not a story we even had to sell. They were hyper aware that Amazon was going into this business, and Amazon failed at it, frankly. But they didn't fail till after Walmart acquired us, which was again good for us. But
Hmm.
yeah, I had friends who worked at Amazon, and for whatever reason, Amazon could not get direct to consumer healthcare together on an on demand basis, and I don't think they still have.
Yeah. And you mentioned trailing 12 months. Was that really how you were deriving the valuation when you were negotiating with them, or you were going back and forth on price? It sounds like you just sort of set a price and they didn't flinch at it, which is great. But how
That's
did you back
that's
into it?
kind of where it happened. But we couldn't do a public market multiple because we weren't a public market company. But did probably a 50% of a public market multiple. I think is what we were at,
Uh-huh.
which I thought was more than generous on their side. And for us, it was life changing.
Hmm. And from what you can tell now, I think there's always a fun story to be told about the team moving over. And Walmart is obviously a world class company, so onboarding teams and companies is probably a whole department, I would assume there. Eh,
Huge.
huge.
Yeah.
Whereas it's often that smaller companies do acquisitions and then it explodes because there's no one to help, there's no process. but what was that like in terms of the whole? Did the whole company come over? Did people leave? What was that
No,
experience?
pretty much everybody came over except me. I was a consultant for a year, but everybody
Mhm.
else is still working there. And it's been an experience for them because they are literally the battleship that's tough to steer. And I came in as a consultant to help them on different projects, and I loved it. I mean, the people I worked with were rock stars. But I would be like, I'm a startup guy. I'd be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Let me go into Walmart and I will be the wizard behind the curtains and we'll do a virtual medicine visit with people that come in. But if I have to, I'll just run around the curtain and say, oh, I'm here. What do you need? I can see you. And we'll direct them to the pharmacy. Oh, you can't direct them to the pharmacy because that's an ermine, which it is. So you've got to direct them to any pharmacy and hopefully they'll use Walmart. Okay, easy to do. And I said, okay, let's do it. Like it's 2 miles away. Again, been in Walmart 3 times in my life, but I'll go sit in Walmart for a month and make this work. No, no, no. We can never do that. That's something we won't do. But why? We're gonna do an MVP on this model where we have a virtual clinic next to the pharmacy where people go, now I'm not feeling well. Oh, stop on over to the virtual clinic. And the company was so big and had so much. They're so risk averse and there's so many layers to get through it. When I was talking to the head of the pharmacy, she was like, you know, uh, can't do that. And from my construct, which was emergency medicine, you play as you go. It's a no brainer.
Huh.
But it was a great lesson for me that bigger worlds exist differently, and the people that are still there always laugh like, there's layers and layers and layers of stuff they have to go through. But when I talked to the CEO, he was more the startup ethos sort of guy. You could just tell by talking to him. He started loading trucks when he was 16 at Walmart, um, and literally worked his way up.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. The CEO being the kind of scrappy concept, but then the bureaucracy and like the just
Yeah,
craziness underneath is so hard to get through, that a lot of times that is what crushes spirits, right? When you come in from a small team into a big company,
yeah, and
everybody,
innovation.
yeah, true, true, very true. So that was 2 years that you were there, or how long did you stay there
So,
again?
so that was so I had a contract for a year, so I did it
Yeah,
for a year as consultant, and frankly, they didn't really need me at all, and they would out of probably kindness and respect, bring me into things, but they had plenty of people that could do the work, and they tend to hire very smart people.
yeah. So what happens then? You bow
So I,
out.
so I, yeah, so I went out. So I had, I'm still, I have a business called Tribal Healthcare, which we staff about 50 different tribal hospitals around the country, with about 500 providers, 450 providers that work in these different facilities. And so I do that. And then I started the venture capital company, and we've made 11 investments so far and raised about $25 million.
Cool, cool. So how long after the Walmart exit and you started tribal health?
So Tribal Health, I started in 2015.
Oh wow. Okay,
So
so there's overlap.
I tend to have multiple. I try to, as I see one winding down or myself winding, I always try to find a good CEO and hire them so I can get out. And then I'll start another business. And I've been kind of doing that my whole life.
Nice. Very smart. Very smart. So that leads us to the finale question. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell John 10 years ago?
So I've never been risk averse, and I've always had this perspective. It's, the emergency medicine of no one is dying. How bad can it be? So I like to try to think of myself as living in this perpetual state of beta where I'm not quite where I want to be, but I'm always on the road to getting where I want to be. And I think that there's a large amount of people out there who, strive for perfection and they strive, you've got to do it this way. And man, life's too short. There's some things that you just have to, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And when it doesn't, pick it up and go. So every mistake I've made, and I've had some big ones, every failure I've had, and I've had some large ones, it always works out better afterwards. And I always can say, like I got fired from NextCare. I resigned. I got fired from NextCare. And now I could look back and say, thank God that happened to me, because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have started MeMD. and I wouldn't have had this great exit with Walmart. And thank God that happened because, I got to do Accelerant Ventures. But all these things that seem like mistakes, if you can look at them through this perspective of, okay, that was a great learning opportunity. Yeah, might have been able to do some stuff better, but boy, did I learn a lot. Okay, onwards. Next one's going to be a killer. And if you keep having that perspective, then you're never wallowing in your own misery. It's like, everything's fall down 7, get up 8.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now. You said that you're working on the tribal health and you also have the venture firm. What can you
Right.
share more about that?
The venture firm.
Yeah.
So it's seed and Series A, and the reason I started, I wrote a book called Entrepreneurs RX. It's for really healthcare startups, and the idea being that who better to fix healthcare than people in healthcare, and a lot of physicians and nurses and APCs are really in the best position. So the idea behind Accelerant Ventures and the book was to find them and fund them so they bring their products to market, and their products are solving problems that are frequent and urgent and expensive to solve, like many things in healthcare. So we've been able to have great deal flow looking at these products, and I've met some amazing founders who are literally going to change the world. So it's been a blast.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Healthcare definitely needs innovation.
Need some fixing.
Needs some fixing. Needs some fixing. Well, cool. Where can people go and learn more about it?
You can go to accelerantventures.com. It's XCELLERANT ventures.com. I'm on LinkedIn. It's John Shufeldt, and I have a website, johnshufeldtmd.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that John mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, John.
Thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure.